Welcome back to the GoBros YouTube channel. Today we're working on this 2012 Chevy Equinox. The engine's making a terrible knocking sound and the transmission slips on it. But not to worry, we got a plan for a donor engine and transmission behind the barn. Back here we got basically the exact same vehicle. This one, the frame is rusted out on it, but it runs great. All right, we're gonna get back in the shop and start ripping out that engine, and then we'll flip-flop vehicles, pull that engine, and put the good engine in this one. First things first, let's get this on some jack stands so we can drain the oil, coolant, and get it ready to pull up. Make sure you find two good spots to put your jack stands because you're going to be under there quite a bit throughout the whole process. Pull the plug on the bottom of your radiator to drain your coolant, and then drain your oil out while you're underneath. Unplug your battery and get that thing right out of the way. There's two bolts holding the air filter box in, and then one 5/16 hose clamp holding everything onto the throttle body. This takes quite a bit of time, but just use a pick and go around basically the whole front of the motor and unplug all the electrical connectors. Unbolt all the bolts for the intake. It's hard to slide the intake out, so I found it's easiest to unbolt the direct injector rail. Then once you get that out, it is way easier to pull your intake manifold out. Unplug all your coil pack wires. And I didn't get a very good video of this, but right now I'm unbolting the alternator and the AC compressor. Then whenever you have all them connectors unplugged, you can get them out of the way too. Now we're gonna go ahead and start taking out all the bolts for the exhaust manifold. All right. Back here, I got the exhaust manifold bolts out. These ones I'm gonna soak in Kroll oil and hit them with a torch to see if I can break those loose to get this whole exhaust manifold right out of our way. So when we pull the engine out, we're not hitting that exhaust manifold. To pull the starter out, there's two bolts, one on the top and one on the very bottom, and then the starter should pull right out. You will have to unhook the positive cable going to the battery. All right, I pulled the starter out, and as you can see now, and by rotating the crankshaft, you can see that torque converter bolt with the red stripe on it. There's four of those, so gonna get a impact in there and bust those loose. And then just use a wrench on the crank side and rotate it over till you see another 18mm bolt there, and do that 3 times until you got them all out. Right now I'm pulling off the hose that goes from the radiator to the thermostat. Underneath your thermostat housing, right down there, one of the transmission or engine to transmission bolts, and there's a ground. There's a big ground wire that goes from your battery to the bolt here. Take that off, and then it's an 18mm to get the actual stud out. we're underneath now. Looking at the transmission here and the engine here. So we gotta take this bolt out. Up here, there, we got that bolt taken out. For the CV axle mount, one right there. Looks like there's two up there, one there, and then one on the other side there. On the very bottom of the engine, there's a 15mm bolt there, 15mm bolt there, then there's a little bracket that goes up from that hole up there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's there. Remove your motor mount and actually use the side of the engine to hoist up the engine out of the car. Found one more transmission bolt right behind the backside underneath the thermostat housing. Once you got it loose, just slowly work your way up until you got it all the way out. Alright, so the next thing we got to do is work on getting this transmission taken out. We got to get the CV axles out, both sides. So we got to pull the wheel off, probably the upper control arm bolt, so the wheel can tip out and we can get that CV axle pulled out. And then this, if you take a little pry bar, that shaft should just pop right out of the transmission. Nothing super crazy here, just pull your wheel off. Remove the CV axle nut. Then there's two bolts that hold the upper strut mount into the knuckle assembly. The bolts are splined, so you'll have to use a hammer to tap them out. Unclip your wheel speed sensor from your brake line. Then remove your bracket for your brake line. At this point, you just kind of got to wiggle the CV axle out of the hub. Just be careful of your brake line that you don't pull it too hard. Once you have it completely out, you can just pull on it a little bit from the transmission and it'll pop right out of its housing. Make sure you have a bucket there to catch the transmission fluid. And then basically the exact same thing on the other side, but you don't have that extra jack shaft going into the transmission, just the CV axle. I just put one bolt in the top of the strut to hold that assembly back together. There's two bolts holding on your shift linkage, and that shift linkage connector just pops right off. You got three 15mm bolts there for the top transmission mount. By the fill cap, there's your transmission cooler lines. You have a 14 or 13mm bolt here, and then the same thing goes down there, and on the back side, right down there, there's another transmission line right there, and a 14mm bolt there. You gotta take off. On the front of the transmission, you have the main electrical connector. It has a little lever you gotta pry up and then pry towards the passenger side, and then that whole connector should unplug. And you can pull that up out of the way so it's not in your way when you drop the transmission. There's 3 bolts holding the transmission mount to the transmission, and then there's 1 bolt holding the transmission mount to the car. I unbolted everything to just get the transmission mount right out of the way. Then at this point, I put a jack underneath the transmission and then unhooked the last transmission mount. This point would have been nice to have a second set of hands just to balance it while I was lowering the jack. I just slowly worked my way down till I was at a spot where I could get underneath the car and guide it down a little bit easier. We successfully have removed the engine and transmission from this Equinox. Lots of open space in here now. So the plan for this, I have a engine in the back put in this, and I'm gonna see if I can send this transmission off to a local transmission shop to have it gone through and make sure it's all set to go before we go ahead and put it back in. That's going to end off part 1 of this Equinox project. Got quite a bit done. We're going to send these off to get repaired and get that other engine ready to put in this Equinox. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.